Do you actually need a buyer's agent in Fernie or in the Elk Valley when purchasing your property? I want to answer this question honestly because the honest answer is more useful to you than the self-serving one. Do you need a buyer's agent in Fernie? The answer is genuinely, it depends on your situation. And I'm going to tell you exactly when you do, when you don't, and what you're actually signing up for in either case. I'll also explain some BC specific rules that most buyers from Alberta or Ontario don't know about. Rules that actually change the calculation compared to what you might be used to back home. Now let's start with the most important thing buyers get wrong about buyer's agents in BC. Here's what surprises most buyers who ask me this question. In BC, a buyer's agent typically costs you nothing directly. And when a property is listed, the seller and their agent agree on a total commission payout. That commission is then split between the listing agent and the buyer's agent. The split comes out of the seller's proceeds at closing, not out of the buyer's pocket. On a typical $1 million home in Fernie, the commission is roughly 6% on the first $100,000 and 3% on the balance or the remainder. That works out to approximately $30,000 split between the buyer and the seller agents. You as a buyer don't write that check. That is the seller's check. The seller's proceeds cover that. Now there's an important nuance. Some sellers in BC are choosing not to offer buyer agent compensation or offering a reduced amount. In those situations, if you're working with the buyer's agent, you may need to discuss how their compensation works. And this is why it's important to have a clear conversation about fees before you start searching. The BCFSA regulations require your agent to disclose their compensation to you, but the general point stands. Most buyers in Fernie who use a buyer's agent pay nothing directly for that representation. The service is effectively prepaid by the market structure and the seller's fees take care of it. Here's the specific rule that surprises almost every buyer who I work with who's coming from Alberta. Dual agency, where the one agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. This is a normal thing in Alberta. We used to have it here in BC, and now it is banned. You really can't do this anymore, except for extenuating circumstances. Since 2018, the Real Estate Council of BC has prohibited dual agency in almost all of the circumstances. So the only exceptions are genuinely remote properties in areas underserved by real estate professionals where it's not practical for the parties to have different agents. Fernie is not that market. In Fernie, you cannot use the listing agent to save money or get a deal by having them represent you. It's illegal. The listing agent is the seller's agent. That's it. Full stop. They represent the seller 100%. Why does that matter? Well, because many buyers from Alberta are used to the kind of idea of working directly with the listing agent and negotiating a better deal. In BC, that option doesn't exist. When you approach a Fernie listing without your own representation, you are an unrepresented buyer, and the listing agent is required to give you an unrepresented buyer form, making clear they have no duty of loyalty to you, only to their client who is the seller. So think about what that means. When you're negotiating on $1 million home, the person on the other side of the table has one job: to get the best deal for the seller. And you have no one whose job it is to protect you or your interests. So what does a buyer's agent actually do? Let me be very specific to the Fernie market, because this isn't the same as buying a condo in Calgary. Local market intelligence that you can't get online is what you're going to use that agent for. Fernie is a small, specialized market. The MLS data tells you what properties are listed for. It doesn't tell you which streets have the best sun exposure, which strata buildings have difficult boards, which neighborhoods has a development proposal coming that will change the character of the block, or which listing has been on the market 2, 3, 4 times over the past year or two because of inspection issues. Well, a buyer's agent who knows Fernie specifically, not just BC in general, brings that intelligence to your search. Now, strata document review. This is one of the most critical services in the Fernie condo and townhouse market. A strata property comes with a package of documents, minutes, financials, depreciation reports, bylaws, and pending special assessments, also the insurance. These documents can run hundreds of pages. Your buyer's agent will review these and flag anything significant, upcoming levies, pending litigation, insurance shortfall, bylaw restrictions on short-term rentals. And in a market where many condos are in the 400 to 600,000 range and carry strata fees, the state of the strata corporation's finances and reserve fund matters enormously. So the other thing you're going to get is offer strategy and negotiation. Fernie's market is not a bidding war market right now. Some properties still are, but overall, generally not. But it's not a pushover market either. Properties that are well priced and well presented are still generating multiple interest. Your agent's job is to advise you an offer price relative to the actual comparables, not asking price. In Fernie specifically, the gap between asking and actual sales price varies significantly by neighborhood, property type, and how long a listing has been on the market. Knowing whether a property has room to negotiate and how much is local knowledge, that takes years to build. So let's talk about the subjects and conditions. Well, in BC, subjects, what are called conditions in Alberta, are the conditional clauses in your offer that protect you while you do your due diligence. A home inspection, financing condition, strata document review condition. Fernie has specific physical conditions that affect inspection scope. Older foundations, heritage building quirks, freeze-thaw cycles on plumbing and exterior cladding, roof load calculations for heavy snowfall. A buyer's agent who knows this market will ensure your inspection scope covers these specific issues and that your subjects adequately protect you. So when don't you need a buyer's agent? Well, let me be honest about when you might actually not need a buyer's agent. If you're a cash buyer, extremely knowledgeable about BC real estate law, have a real estate lawyer engaged to review all your documents, and you're buying a straightforward freehold property with no strata, no heritage designation, and no complex conditions, you can technically navigate a Fernie transaction without a buyer's agent. But most buyers don't tick all those boxes, and the cost of having a lawyer review these things instead of a real estate agent, that comes straight out of your pocket. The seller doesn't care. The seller is going to pay for the other stuff. He's not paying for your lawyer. And the buyers who are most confident that they don't need representation are often the ones who end up learning the hardest lessons because their confidence is based on experiences in a different market with different rules. The buyers I most strongly advise to use representation are anyone buying remotely from Alberta or another province who hasn't spent significant time in Fernie. Anyone buying a strata property, the document complexity alone justifies representation. First-time home buyers or buyers who haven't been through a BC real estate transaction before, anyone buying at the upper end of their budget where a mistake carries serious financial consequences. So the question to ask any buyer's agent you're considering, when you're sitting down across from your potential buyer's agent, pretend you're sitting across from me right now, you're going to want to ask these things. If you're going to use a buyer's agent in Fernie, here's what you need to ask before you commit. How many transactions have you done in the Fernie market specifically in the last 12 months? Not just in the Kootenays generally, Fernie specifically. Have you personally reviewed strata documents for properties in the Ski Hill area and downtown heritage buildings? These are two very different strata environments. How do you handle these properties that are priced above the market? Will you tell me when to walk away? And what is your availability during a typical week? Fernie is a market where good properties can move quickly in the spring, and you need an agent who can act, not one who gets back to you in 48 hours. And importantly, how are you compensated, and what do I need to know about commission disclosure before we start? Any agent worth working with will welcome these questions and answer them directly. So do you need a buyer's agent in Fernie? For most buyers, I'm going to tell you absolutely yes. It doesn't cost you anything. The seller's already paying those fees. Not because your agents are indispensable in every market, but because BC's rules are so different. Believe me, Fernie's market is super specialized, and the stakes are high enough that having someone in your corner whose job it is to protect your interests is worth it. And in most transactions, it costs you nothing directly. If you have questions about buying in the buying process in Fernie specifically, drop them in the comments below. I read them all, and watch the next video. It's going to be a cool one. I go through what Fernie buyers notice the second they walk into a home, which is exactly what you need to understand if you're going to go to showings.